You see more than you should. That is the part nobody warns you about. While most people skate on the surface of life, content with reflections, you dive straight down into the cold depth where things stop pretending. You notice patterns hiding inside smiles, the hesitation behind laughter, the motives folded carefully into ordinary words. It is like hearing a second conversation underneath the first one, a quiet code that only you can read. At first, it feels like a blessing. They call you insightful, sharp, gifted. Teachers like you. Friends come to you for advice. People say, "You understand me better than I understand myself." And you start to believe that seeing this much is what makes life interesting. But seeing more also means feeling more. And feeling more means suffering more. Because every layer of truth you uncover burns away another layer of comfort. When your mind connects everything, nothing stays simple. Joy becomes analysis. Love becomes a case study. Peace turns into a theory you can explain but never quite touch. You try to describe this to people, but they say you are overthinking, too serious, too negative. They laugh at the very thing that will not let you rest. That is when it first occurs to you. Maybe intelligence is not light. Maybe it is fire. It illuminates, but it also consumes. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this long before the digital age. For him, the curse was not stupidity's absence, but consciousness's punishment. The unbearable clarity of seeing life as it truly is. A restless cycle of desire and disappointment, driven by a blind, relentless will that never stops wanting. Once you see that, the world stops looking like a playground and starts looking like a machine. Beautiful in its patterns, yes, but merciless in its purpose. Welcome to the curse of the intelligent mind. You begin to notice how most lives move along a script. Wake, work, want, repeat. People complain about their pain, but they rarely question the system that manufactures it. They chase goals, but never ask where their goals came from. They seek meaning, but only in places that have been pre-approved by the crowd. You, on the other hand, start seeing the machinery beneath it all. You see how ambition is fear wearing a perfect suit, how charming behavior is often quiet manipulation, how love can be a pact between two lonely people trying to escape themselves. You watch people run toward careers, partners, titles, and heavens as if salvation waited at the end of every chase. But Schopenhauer whispers from the past, purpose is not found. It is fabricated. A story laid gently over an endless hunger. The will wants, and the mind invents reasons after the fact. The more clearly you see this, the more you feel the divide. You want to talk about the truth. The room wants entertainment. You want to question the point. They want to protect the illusion. They call it optimism. You call it tranquilized denial. And denial, you realize, is the most addictive substance on earth. It keeps humanity sleeping, while intelligence lies awake, haunted by the sound of its own awareness. Every morning you open your eyes and you can already feel it, how fragile everything is, the body you live in, the relationships you depend on, the money you chase, the reputation you polish. Time is quietly eroding all of it, grain by grain, and you are painfully aware. This awareness does not make you fearless. It simply makes you unable to lie to yourself. You understand too much to be naive, but not enough to be at peace. That is the paradox of the intelligent. You have the mind of a god and the vulnerabilities of an animal. Most people live simply because they do not think deeply. The intelligent think constantly because they cannot live simply. Between those two extremes lies the silent torment of every perceptive soul. You know too much to believe blindly, and you feel too much to forget. Schopenhauer did not see intelligence as evolution's triumph. He saw it as evolution's sharpest joke. At the base of every life form, he said, lies a single blind energy, the will to live. It does not reason. It does not ask permission. It just pushes. It drives the plant to reach for light, the animal to hunt, the human to chase, build, and desire. Not because we choose to, but because we are compelled to. Intelligence does not free you from this will. It only exposes it. It lets you see the strings, but never lets you cut them. You understand the absurdity of the chase, yet you keep running. You know your ambitions are distractions, your pleasures temporary, your victories brief, and still, you cannot stop wanting. The will is the puppet master. Intelligence is the puppet that suddenly becomes self-aware. It looks up, sees the strings, and whispers, "Is this really all there is?" That whisper is the birth of philosophy and the death of easy happiness. Schopenhauer compared life to a pendulum that swings back and forth between pain and boredom. When we lack what we want, we suffer. When we finally get it, we grow restless. And the moment contentment arrives, it already begins to spoil. The intelligent mind does not just ride this pendulum. It watches itself swinging and understands the mechanism. That is why the pain cuts deeper. The fool suffers blindly. The thinker suffers consciously. You get the promotion, but satisfaction evaporates before the ink dries on the contract. You fall in love, but your mind already imagines the entropy, the conflict, the loss. Even joy starts to feel haunted by its own ending. Every high comes with a built-in countdown, and when nothing particular hurts, boredom shows up like a slow poison. The mind that never stops analyzing cannot sit quietly without turning inward and devouring itself. It invents problems to solve, enemies to fight, fantasies to chase, anything to escape the silence. The more intelligent you are, the more elaborate your internal labyrinth becomes. This is what Schopenhauer called the tyranny of consciousness. The moment awareness begins to observe itself, you watch your joy and dissect it. You experience sadness and start narrating it. You step outside your own life as if you were both actor and critic, always living and analyzing at the same time. The ordinary mind says, "I am happy." The intelligent mind says, "Why am I happy?" And in asking, kills the very state it is trying to hold. You begin to envy the simplicity of instinct, the dog that wags its tail without wondering about purpose, the child that laughs without challenging the meaning of laughter. But you cannot go back. You have already crossed the threshold. Intelligence, once awakened, does not allow retreat. The more perceptive you become, the harder it is to participate. To play the game, you must pretend not to see it. You must treat status as real, success as salvation, attention as love. You must nod along with conversations that feel scripted and care about arguments that feel empty. Schopenhauer warned that the intelligent man cannot fully immerse himself in society without feeling like a hypocrite, and he cannot fully withdraw without feeling insane. He lives in a kind of no man's land, too awake for comfortable illusion, too alive for peaceful detachment. So you learn to shrink. You become careful with your honesty, measured with your passion. You wear normalcy like armor. You nod when you disagree. You smile when you ache. You disappear when the noise gets too loud. Deep down, you know you were not built for small talk. You were built for depth, and depth does not fit inside casual conversation. And yet, something else begins to grow beneath the weight of all this awareness. A strange kind of compassion. When you see too much, judgment becomes harder to maintain. You look at a stranger in pain, and something in you whispers, "That is me in another circumstance." Different face, same fear. Different story, same sentence. You start to understand that the cruelty of the world is not only a failure of kindness, but a failure of awareness. People hurt each other not always because they are evil, but because they are blind. They are obeying the same. Will you see so clearly? But they do not have your vantage point. They are running on instincts, wounds, and fear. The smarter you become, the less you can hate. Every flaw you despise in others, you have already dissected within yourself. But that same compassion becomes a new source of suffering. You begin to absorb the world's sorrow like a sponge. You feel the despair of those who cannot articulate it. You feel the panic of a planet constantly distracting itself. Your heart was not built to hold this much. So once again, you withdraw. Not because you do not care, but because you care too much. You retreat into solitude, not as an act of arrogance, but as an act of self-defense. The wise do not leave the crowd because they think they are better. They leave because they can no longer breathe inside the collective illusion. Meanwhile, the world rushes to sell you forgetfulness. Distraction has become our greatest religion, a temple of glowing screens and infinite scroll. You feel the heavy weight of existence, and instantly you are offered a new show, a new trend, a new hit of stimulation. Every uncomfortable thought is met with an easier alternative. But distraction does not erase suffering, it simply delays it. It wraps despair in bright colors and returns it later with interest. Schopenhauer said that most people will do anything rather than think because thought exposes pain and pain exposes truth. Comfort becomes a leash, and the will has evolved. It no longer drives us only through hunger and danger. It drives us through overstimulation and addiction. The intelligent suffer most in this system. You see exactly how every click, every ad, every algorithm is feeding on your attention. You know how your own weakness is being harvested for profit. You scroll while hating scrolling. You consume while despising consumption. You speak of mindfulness while drowning in noise, and you know it. This is where the story could end, in cynicism, alienation, and quiet despair. But Schopenhauer's philosophy, dark as it is, contains a hidden doorway. He never promised happiness, but he hinted at something different. Clarity. And clarity, if you accept its price, can become a kind of power. The turning point comes when you stop asking, "How do I feel better?" and start asking, "What is true?" That single shift changes the function of your intelligence. Instead of using thought as a weapon against yourself, you begin to use it as a lens. Suffering does not vanish, but it reorganizes. It stops being chaos and becomes information. You start to design a life that is friendly to your mind. Not a life stuffed with distraction, but one built around deliberate stillness. Long walks, deep reading, honest writing, moments of quiet looking out a window with no agenda. You begin to live like an architect of silence instead of a victim of noise. In that silence, something profound happens. The will is still there, still pushing, still wanting, but its voice grows less commanding. You remain aware of your desires, yet no longer entirely possessed by them. You feel the pull of validation, but you can choose not to chase it. You sense the spike of envy, but watch it pass like a cloud instead of obeying it. Intelligence, finally, is doing its proper job, not inventing more illusions, but exposing them before they take root. Solitude, which once felt like exile, becomes a sanctuary. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, Schopenhauer wrote. Now the sentence makes sense in your bones. In solitude, you are no longer performing. You are no longer adjusting your soul to fit someone else's expectation. The mind cleans itself when you leave it alone. Gradually, you stop searching for meaning, as if it were hidden somewhere out there. You begin to create meaning through the way you see, the way you act, the way you endure. You stop expecting life to feel fair. You stop demanding permanent comfort. You start measuring your days not by how little you suffered, but by how honestly you met what came. This does not erase the curse of intelligence, but it changes its shape. You are still sensitive. You still see patterns others do not. You still feel pain more sharply than most, but you are no longer surprised by it. It no longer humiliates you. It becomes a teacher instead of an enemy. You become what we might call a lucid participant in existence. You know the game is rigged by the will, that happiness is brief, that loss is guaranteed, that misunderstanding is normal. And yet, you still choose to act with awareness, to create where you can, to be kind when it is hardest, to protect your peace like something sacred. Intelligence will probably never give you the carefree happiness sold in advertisements, but it can give you something rarer, an honest life. A life where you do not have to lie to yourself to get through the day. A life where your solitude is rich, your perception is sharp, and your soul is not for sale. The world may remain noisy. The pendulum may continue to swing between pain and boredom. The will may keep driving every heartbeat toward its mysterious purposes. But your relationship to all of this can change. You stop being a victim of your mind and become the curator of it. You learn that not every thought deserves belief. Not every impulse deserves action. Not every fear deserves a throne. You realize that the curse of intelligence was never that you see too much. It was that you had not yet learned what to do with what you see. Once you accept that life is not designed for your comfort, you stop taking your discomfort personally. You stop feeling attacked by reality and start working with it. And in that quiet, stubborn cooperation with the truth, a new kind of peace appears. Not the pleasant numbness of illusion, but the steady calm of someone who has nothing left to hide from themselves. The curse is still there. The fire of intelligence still burns. But now you know how to contain it, how to warm your life with it, how to hold it without letting it consume you. You were never doomed for being intelligent. You were only doomed as long as you resisted what intelligence revealed. So do not resist. Look deeper. Think harder. Feel fully. Guard your solitude. Use your mind as a light even when it burns. In a world that is desperate to stay asleep, the weight you feel is proof that you are still awake. The curse of intelligence is heavy, but so is the crown of truth. Wear it well.